Listen, that thing you're most defensive about, that's the exact thing destroying your relationships, your career, and your potential. Your ego isn't protecting you. It's suffocating you. And the worst part, you're not even aware it's happening. Most people go their entire lives getting slowly erased by their own psychological armor, and they never figure out why. But you're about to. Your ego isn't some abstract concept. It is a specific psychological construct built from how you see yourself and how you think others see you. And it's been hijacked. Here's what happened. When you were a kid, you experienced rejection. Maybe a parent was cold. Maybe kids made fun of you. Maybe you failed at something important. And your brain did what brains do. Created a defense mechanism. It built an identity around the idea that you needed to be a certain way to be safe, to be worthy, to matter. That identity became your ego. And listen, for a while, it worked. That identity protected you. It motivated you. It gave you direction. But here, the part nobody tells you, the thing that once saved you is now slowly killing you. Because now you're not actually living your life. You're defending a story about yourself. You know that moment when someone criticizes you and you immediately feel a flash of anger before you even think? That's your ego. It's not trying to help you anymore. It's trying to maintain the image you've constructed. And it will burn bridges, sabotage opportunities, and destroy your mental health to do it. Think about the last time you were wrong about something. Did you admit it immediately? Or did you do that thing where you found a way to reframe it so you and actually wrong? That's your ego. It's not interested in truth. It's interested in being right. There's a difference. The psychological term is called cognitive dissonance. When reality threatens your self-image, your ego doesn't adjust the self-image. It rejects reality instead. It literally rewrites what happened so your identity stays intact. But here's the twist. Every single time you do this, you lose credibility with everyone around you. They notice, maybe not consciously, but they notice that you can't admit mistakes. They notice that you have to win every argument. They notice that you can't genuinely listen because you're too busy defending. And they pull away. Your ego lives in comparison. It doesn't know how to measure your worth except by how you stack up against other people. This is where social media destroyed an entire generation. Because now your ego has unlimited data. It can compare you to literally thousands of people every single day. And here's the psychological reality. If you're using comparison as your measurement tool, you will always feel inadequate. There will always be someone more successful, more attractive, more confident, or liked. The dopamine hit from feeling superior lasts about 3 seconds, before your brain finds someone else who says ahead of you and the anxiety comes roaring back. This creates a cycle. Your ego feels threatened, so it pushes you to achieve more, buy more, say more, post more. And for a moment, you feel like you've won. You feel safe. You feel worthy. But then someone else achieves something bigger, and the cycle starts again. You're on a hedonic treadmill powered by your own insecurity. And here's what's insidious. You think you're ambitious. You think you're driven. But you're not. You're just running from the shame of being ordinary. That's not ambition. That's fear wearing ambition's clothes. Real ambition comes from internal motivation. It comes from wanting to build something meaningful, to solve a problem, to express yourself. But ego-driven achievement comes from wanting to prove something to people who don't actually care as much as you think they do. The people you trying to impress aren't thinking about you nearly as much as your ego thinks they are. They're too busy defending their own egos, running their own comparison cycles, worrying about what you think of them. You're all so busy trying to look good that nobody's actually being real. And the people who are real, the ones who admit weakness, who laugh at themselves, who don't need the performance, they're the ones everyone actually wants to be around. They're the ones with real influence, real connection, real power. But your ego tells you the opposite. It tells you that vulnerability is weakness, that admitting you don't know something diminishes you, that needing help makes you less than. Your ego is a liar, and you've believed it your entire life. Here's something dark psychologists understand. Narcissism exists on a spectrum, and most people are further on that spectrum than they want to admit. Your ego is inherently narcissistic. It cannot simultaneously prioritize your own image and genuinely empathize with someone else's experience. Those are neurologically incompatible functions. So when someone tells you they're struggling, and your immediate thought is, how does this affect me? Or how should I respond to look compassionate? That's your ego. It's not actually listening. It's performing listening. You'll do this constantly. Someone shares something vulnerable, and instead of sitting with their experience, you immediately start thinking about what you'll say next. You're waiting for your turn to talk. You're mentally preparing your response. You're planning how to relate it back to something that happened to you. That person can feel that. On some level, even if they can't articulate it, they know they weren't actually heard. This is why people don't trust you, even if they like you. This is why relationships stay shallow. This is why you're surrounded by people but feel alone. Because your ego has made you emotionally unavailable. You can't be present with someone else's pain without making it about you. And the people in your life are starving for genuine connection. Here's the brutal part. You probably think you're a good listener. You probably think you're empathetic. But empathy isn't about what you feel or what you say. It's about what you don't do. It's about not inserting yourself. It's about letting someone else's experience exist without immediately translating it into something about you. And your ego refuses to do that. Why? Because real empathy requires you to make yourself small, to prioritize someone else's experience over your own narrative, to be wrong about things, to not have all the answers, to admit that someone else's pain is bigger than your need to be helpful. Your ego can't survive that. So instead, you've built a version of yourself that looks empathetic. You use the right words. You make the right facial expressions. You perform concern. But underneath, you're still measuring, still comparing, still running your own internal commentary about how well you're doing this. And everyone knows it. Your ego has made you afraid of failure in a way that's completely irrational, not failure itself. Most people will tell you they're fine with failure. They'll give you the whole Tony Robbins speech about how failure is just feedback. But that's not what you actually believe. What you actually believe is that failure is evidence that you're really not as special as you need to be. That failure is proof of your fundamental inadequacy. That if you fail, people will finally see you for what you really are. Ordinary, flawed, replaceable. So you don't try things that matter. You don't pursue the goals that actually excite you. You don't have the conversations that need to happen. Because if you try and fail, your ego doesn't survive. So instead, you pick safe goals, achievable goals, mediocre goals, things you know you can win at, things that look good enough but don't require you to actually risk anything real. And then you wonder why your life feels hollow. This is the cognitive pattern called self-handicapping. Before you even start something difficult, you create excuses for why you might fail. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have the right resources. I was dealing with too much. You're literally engineering your own failure so your ego has a reason to explain it. Because failure that's your fault is too dangerous. Failure that's circumstantial, that your ego can live with. But here's what actually happens. People who succeed are people who have failed so many times that their egos stopped being able to use it against them. They've missed so many shots that the fear of missing just became part of the game. They've been rejected enough times that rejection stopped, meaning there's something wrong with me, and started meaning that person was into the right fit. Their egos didn't disappear, but they stopped driving the decision. The people you admire, the people who actually matter, they're not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who failed so publicly, so dramatically, so many times that they had to choose. Either let my ego destroy me, or get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's the choice you're avoiding. Your ego is sabotaging your intimate relationships, and you don't even realize it. Intimacy requires radical vulnerability. It requires showing someone the parts of you that you're ashamed of, the doubts, the fears, the contradictions, the desires you're embarrassed about, the insecurities that keep you up at night. Your ego's entire job is to hide those things. So what do you do in relationships? You curate, you perform, you show the version of yourself that looks good, and for a while, the other person does the same. So it feels intimate because you're both being vulnerable in limited, controlled ways. But true intimacy never deepens beyond that point. Because to go deeper, one of you has to risk being seen completely, and your ego won't allow it. So you get stuck in a pattern where you're intimate, but not really known. You have sex, but not real connection. You share a life, but not a self, and both of you feel alone in the relationship. The other person can sense that you're not fully there, that there's a part of you that's always protecting, always editing, always performing. And they become more guarded too, because your walls teach them it's not safe to fully open up. And so the relationship becomes two people slowly eroding into resentment, because neither of them is willing to risk being fully seen. This is especially true in long-term relationships, because time reveals everything. You can't sustain a performance for years. Eventually cracks form, and your ego responds to those cracks by either becoming more critical of your partner or more withdrawn. Here's the dark truth. You sabotaged the relationships where true intimacy is possible. You choose safety over connection. And then you wonder why the love feels conditional. It's conditional because you've made it conditional. You've said I'll love you if you never ask me to be more vulnerable than I'm comfortable with. And your partner feels that even if you never say the words. So how do you actually fix this? How do you get your ego to stop running your life? First, you have to understand something. You can't kill your ego. That's not the goal. Your ego serves important function. It gives you a sense of continuity. It protects you from genuine threats. It helps you navigate social hierarchies. The problem isn't that you have an ego. The problem is that your ego has become the dictator of your life instead of the advisor. So the work isn't elimination, it's dethronement. Here's the first concrete step. Start noticing it, not judging it, just noticing. When you feel defensive, pause. When you feel the urge to prove someone wrong, pause. When you feel competitive with someone who shouldn't be a competitor, pause. That's your ego. Just observe it. The moment you can observe it without being it, you've already started to take back power. Second step, deliberately practice admitting you're wrong. Not kind of wrong. Not wrong in a way that lets you explain why you were actually right. Fully, completely, unambiguously wrong. Find people you trust and practice this. Say I was wrong about that and then stop talking. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just let it sit. Your ego will freak out. Let it. Their discomfort is the ego realizing it's not in charge anymore. Third step. Do one thing every single day that your ego doesn't want you to do. This is crucial. Ask for help when you want to figure it out yourself. Admit you don't know something when the urge is to pretend you do. Make a mistake publicly instead of hiding it. Say I'm scared instead of acting confident. Small acts, but consistent. Fourth step. Reframe failure, not as feedback. That's still ego language. Reframe it as data. That didn't work. What's different next time? Not why did I fail, but what did I learn? The subtle difference is that one is about you and one is about the information. Fifth step. Spend time with people whose egos are smaller than yours, not people with smaller accomplishments. People with smaller egos. People who don't need to win argument. People who can laugh at themselves. People who admit weakness casually. Your ego will resist this because these people are a threat to the identity you've constructed. That's exactly why you need them. And here, the hardest one. Develop a genuine spiritual or philosophical framework that makes your individual ego feel small in a healthy way, whether that's religion, meditation, nature, art, or something else. Your ego needs to experience the reality that not the center of the universe, and that actually okay. That's liberating, not threatening. Most people never do this work because the discomfort is real. The ego doesn't go quietly. But here's what's on the other side. Actual confidence, actual peace, actual impact, actual love. Not the performed version, the real thing. Your ego isn't your enemy, but it's also not your friend. It's a part of you that got scared a long time ago and built walls to protect you. And you're so grateful to those walls that you never realized you're now trapped inside them. The life you want, the relationships, the impact, the peace of it exists on the other side of your ego's willingness to step back. And the question isn't whether you can afford to let it. The question is whether you can afford not to.